management and how implementing ISO 14001 can help save money and increase business opportunities. Jodie.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and good afternoon, and thank you for joining us here today. We specialise at Knauf Management in compliance consultancy and training for quality environmental health and safety management. And as you've already heard, I'm going to talk today about how implementing ISO 14001 can help you save money and increase business opportunities. But first, I just want to spend a few moments considering what is ISO 14001. What is it? How can it help save money? And how can it increase business opportunities? So what it is an environmental management standard. It's internationally recognised, and it provides a framework for implementing and maintaining environmental management systems. It's part of a family of similar standards, such as ISO 9001 or for quality, or OH-SAS 18001 for health and safety. All are founded on the principles of Plan, Do, Check, Act, or just to build up a picture from within the standard itself. This is the kind of thing it's looking at. We've got more information on that for those of you that are interested after the seminar, but moving on, what are the drivers for ISO 14001? I'd love to stand here and tell you today it's because everybody is doing it for the good, green, moral reasons. They want to do the right thing, but I'd be lying. In reality, it's not even legislation that's driving it for the most part. For the most part, customers come to us because their customers have gone to them saying, you need to have an environmental management system in place. So I'm realistic enough to know that most people who come to us for help are doing so because they've been told they've got to. But the good news is that when we work with companies, we do, over time, find that there are a number of money-saving opportunities. So I'm going to bring you a few real case studies from the areas of energy, water, waste, transport and housekeeping before moving on to the business opportunities. So first, a real energy case study. This is for a print company that prints national newspapers. You've almost certainly walked past their products in the newspapers, in the news agents this morning. This company has paper in large reels. You may just be able to see at the top left-hand corner of that picture the lighting system, shown a little bit better there. The lights in the original reel bay at this particular site in Manchester were very inefficient and resulted in using electricity in excess of 52,000 kilowatt hours per annum. It was inefficient because the lighting didn't actually work, it didn't light up all of the areas adequately. It didn't turn on very quickly, so rather than accept the switch-off campaign like they were supposed to, people were leaving the lights on permanently. When the organisation studied how much time people actually needed to be in the reel bay to receive the paper, to store it, at most, even on the busiest day, it was only ever 6.5 hours of actual time they needed to spend in the bay. And yet these lights were being left on 24 hours a day. So they introduced new lighting, and with the new lighting they reduced what was over 2,000 kilowatt hours to just under 7,000 kilowatt hours. That achieved them an annual saving of just over £2,000. In terms of what it cost them to do it, for 9,000 fluorescent fittings, it was just over £1,575. So yes, there was an outlay on this particular project, but as you can see from the calculations there, the payback was just over 9 months. And from that time on, they have continued to actually recover that kind of money. Okay, perhaps you were hoping I was going to give you something that involves spending less money. So now I give you a case study from a local organisation. It's actually the University of Glamorgan. Way back in 2001, 2002, because they've had an ISO 14001 environmental management system for a good number of years now, one really simple initiative, and you can even embrace this one at home, they looked at the accommodation services and the way in which students, and yes, some students do still like to wash up. When the students were washing up, before they introduced this measure, people were just using the sink. By adding something as simple as a washing up bowl, they were able to reduce water consumption. Now, this happened so long ago, it was difficult to try and pinpoint the actual cost savings. But I checked the WaterWise website, which confirmed that introducing this reduces water consumption by 50%. And if you're on a meter, you can relate that to a cost saving as well. Moving on, waste. Our next case study is from a typical warehousing and distribution company. This company is based in London, and like most companies, they generate waste. Like a lot of companies, before embarking on ISO 14001, they had no recycling programme in place. They kind of knew they should, and they kind of knew it was a good idea, but it was only us coming along and saying, well, you've really got to do it if you want to achieve ISO 14001, that gave them the desired push in the right direction. They very quickly implemented a separate cardboard recycling facility and instantly saved themselves over £400 a year from that one single activity. Now, waste is something I can guarantee everybody here is generating within their own organisations, and it really is that simple. But here are some bigger savings. Here is the M4 corridor. Probably, chances are, you've all driven along it at some stage. We've got a company in Bristol. They operate along the M5 in South Wales and sometimes in London. Like a lot of organisations, they use the M4 corridor. They have their vehicles trundling along, emitting emissions. This company happens to specialise in interior landscaping. One year they sat down, this is going back to 2002-2003. Again, they'd already achieved ISO 14001. In reviewing their performance, they realised that they were inefficient. They were sending some trips out to Bristol and then to London and then back across to Gloucester. They realised that by rationalising it, and this is before the days of GPS and all the satellite systems that are in place now, they realised that by rationalising their route, they could save themselves a lot of time, effort and money. Now, this company happens to use fuel cards, so their actual cost saving that year was in the region of about £2,000 because they saved 20,000 miles. But if you happen to have a fleet of sales operatives, sales representatives on the road, and you're clocking up 20,000 miles per annum less, and let's take, for argument's sake, the upper approved limit from the HMRC at 45 pence a mile, that's a staggering £9,000 a year that you can save by saving that. And in case you're thinking this was an enormous firm, it wasn't. They've got about 15 employees. 15, 1-5. So that is something that can be achieved very easily, no cost. And here's the one that will probably surprise you the most, a housekeeping example. We started doing an environmental baseline review, and this is the kind of housekeeping we found for a manufacturing company here in South Wales. As you can see, the level of housekeeping wasn't great. And they've been walking past this day in, day out for years. So we gave them a nudge in the right direction, and they did the housekeeping. They tidied up, and this is what it looked like just 6 months later. Much neater, much tidier, and now things are stored safely where people can find them with no danger of causing pollution to the local watercourse, because now you can see the drain that was previously obscured. The figures that the company came up with for themselves are that in saving the amount of walking around required to try and find things, they have saved themselves a staggering £8,000 a year. £8,000 a year just because people are no longer walking around trying to find things. They now know where they can go. And that doesn't even take into account the cost of replacing things that have been lost or damaged, or indeed the potential fines that they could have had from the Environment Agency had they have caused that pollution. Okay, hopefully now you're on board with the fact that ISO 14001 can help save money. But what about winning more work? Well, essentially, nobody understands your business better than you do, and that includes your clients. And they are coming to you because you are the expert. But often, the people coming to you for help do have an environmental management system themselves. They want to comply with it. They may well want to do the right thing. They'll certainly want to comply with legislation, but often they don't know how, so they'll be looking to you for guidance. And they'll be very glad if you can help them to reduce the running costs. So taking the first 2 points and taking an example of ethical sourcing of materials, I've got a very simple case study using wood. The forest grows slowly, we harvest it quite quickly. We saw an example of that earlier. There are certain things that we can do for ethical sourcing. Perhaps look out for logos like the FFC logo or PEFC. And that can apply whether you are supplying construction materials or whether you're supplying paper for use in an office environment. These are simple initiatives. Okay, the client, your customer, wants to comply with legislation and other requirements as well. Perhaps you manufacture components that are going to go into the built environment. Perhaps then you want to be guiding your clients in terms of the fact it can become BREEAM efficient. Or perhaps you are an air conditioning specialist. Perhaps you're sending guys out on the road, in which case you're going to know far more about ozone depleting substances than your clients are. You'll understand the fact that people have to be competent. You'll understand the fact that certain refrigeration gases are more appropriate than others, and they will look to you for that guidance. Perhaps you manufacture shiny printers or computers or kettles or irons. Now eventually, all of that equipment reaches the end of its life and becomes waste electrical and electronic equipment. Now, even though that legislation has been out for some time, a lot of people still don't understand it, and I still see a lot of customers, a lot of clients taking on the we task on their own, and they're not actually making use of the take-back schemes that are a legal requirement. Now, from your point of view, if you're making these electrical products, does it not give you an opportunity 3 years down the line when they're redundant to say, well, let me take them back and perhaps I can sell you a new one? You've just created a perfect opportunity to increase business. And the last example I've got on this slide, I've run out of acronyms, but we're going to take a look at weeds. Whether you are a civil engineer, a landscaper, or perhaps somebody specialising in land remediation, you may well recognise that is Japanese knotweed. It doesn't always look like that. If anybody has driven down Rover Way in Cardiff recently, it's looking rather lush and green and a bit of a nuisance. But by knowing what that is, you will have a greater idea than your clients that the last thing they should do is touch it or do anything with it, because they're going to increase the problem and compound the spread. So you can guide them. They will be looking to you for that knowledge and support. In terms of helping people to reduce their running costs, a great example that we've come across quite a few times is in terms of office refurbishment companies. I'm just going to give you one short example of what they can do, but perhaps they can guide in terms of lighting, the type of lighting, and indeed increasing the use of natural lighting. If they can do that, then longer term, the client starts to benefit from reducing their long-term running costs. Yes, they might need to pay a little bit more up front at the start of the project, but persuade them that by going for the more environmentally friendly solution, they can save money on the long term, and some companies will certainly embrace that. Okay, so to summarise, by doing your bit to save the planet, you can put more money into your pocket, more money onto your bottom line, and you can win more business. And so hopefully you'll agree that that's a positive story all round. That does conclude everything I wanted to go through now, but if anybody has any questions, I will be just over in the blue chairs afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jodie. I mean, interestingly enough, two presentations that demonstrate that whatever you're looking at,